Happy Friday, everyone. HOKUTOBILL show yokoso. Arigatou gozaimasu. So everyone, thank you for coming. This is HOKUTOBILL live again in Japan. This is Friday, February 19th, I believe. And we are doing this week's show about Visual Kei. 今回の特集は Visual Kei です。So Visual Kei is a type of music that was born out of the hard rock heavy metal era. So these bands had a direct sort of, honestly, they were ex-hard rock metal bands. And they could see that metal was sort of fading. Right? The hard rock heavy metal is fading. By the end of the 80s, when grunge came in there, all the college radios playing on the Nirvana and their band. Won't get into that. The bands here in Japan had their own influences, and not so much Kaigai, but inner. So the top two bands that had maybe the most influence on these early Visual Kei bands would be Bucktick and Dead End, who we talked about a few weeks ago. So, although their styles of music are completely different, but for those bands, the look was very important. So, Bucktick had the nice, crazy, sort of punkish hair up, and, it looked crazy in a good way. And Dead End, mainly their vocalist Mori. So Mori, I would say, had the biggest influence on a lot of these early bands because he had this look where he would change many times. So sometimes he had just the long straight hair, or he had the long fluffy hair, or he had the braided hair, and he had the colored braids inside the hair. So this sort of look, a lot of these bands just straight out stole the look. And I'll show you a picture. It looks exactly like Modi. And then of course you have ex-Japan, another band called Color. They're more punk based, but just the different colors of hair, just crazy. And actually we do have to give credit to ex-Japan, because they're the band that sort of term the coin sort of visual. Well, they use visual in one of their albums. But that album, people sort of took that later. And honestly, the word Visual Kei, you didn't hear it until maybe late 90s, even the term. Because on TV, they didn't know what to call it. It's this new type of rock, and I think someone said, it's Visual Kei. Oh, okay, so that's how it became. But at the time, no one was saying, I want to go see this Visual Kei band. It wasn't like that. They were just the music, right, and how they looked. So from that point, let me tell you there are three types of Visual Kei at the very beginning. So you have Kote Kei, and then you have Nagoya Kei, and then you have Shiro Kei. So those three types were mainly about the top three, the big three, if you could say, of Visual Kei at that moment. They were Lunacy, and you have Kuroyume, and then Lark and Cell. So these bands had a really big impact. So Lunacy's very first album called Lunacy, which was their indies. And after that album, they got signed right away. And same with Lark and Cell. Their album was Dune. And Dune had some cool videos also, I remember. So from that Dune album, boom, they got signed right away. And then Kuroyume. Now, Kuroyume, they would be considered Kote Kei, or used to be Kuro Kei, but Kote Kei, so very dark, heavy, and the lyrics were, really, you're talking about abortions and that type of stuff. So, Kiyoharu was kind of deep back then. So that was Kote Kei. And then Lunacy is also considered Kote Kei at the beginning. But they had twin guitars, but very fast. A lot of changes. Both guys playing something different. But and they can be heavy too. The early Lunacy can be heavy, and then they kind of rolled it back and out a little lighter. But and then you have in the Nagoya Kei. I won't talk about Nagoya Kei much, because that would say maybe the later bands that came out in the mid-90s. A lot of Nagoya Kei. But Bowie, which was an influence on Buck-Tick. And we'll do maybe a Buck-Tick special another time. And then Shiro-Kei, right? With Lyric and Cell. So those are the three types of Visual Kei music that was big in the beginning. All right. Now, what I'll do is list some of my favorites in the 90s, and then I will talk about what we'll talk about next week. But off the top of my head, besides those big three, you've got CIEL, and then CIEL, another underrated band, CIEL. Then you've got you have Laputa, you have Dying Cries. I guess we could throw in Rouage, because Rouage was early before Dying Cries, but throw them in there. And then later on, there's some other bands that want to take advantage of this, the posers, as we'd say back in the days. There's poser bands, just trying to rip off these other Visual Kei bands. So they get a Visual Kei look, but they don't sound Visual Kei. Or rock for them. So you got bands like Shazna, with Izam, with his beautiful look. The Izam, he was on television everywhere. He looks like a woman. So they had him on shows everywhere, and his big song was Melty Love, Melty Love, Melty Love, Melty Love, Melty Love. Just Melty Love, he's a one hit wonder, but he pushed that song everywhere. So Shazna, just for the one song. And then you have Glay, and Glay from Hokkaido. But they had that sort of Visual Kei look, but didn't sound Visual Kei, so it's kind of like, they're kind of more rock, kind of Shiro Kei maybe, if anything, but sort of more of a traditional sort of rock band, but good music. The early first album, you can definitely tell, they had some roots, Visual Kei roots, but then they kind of went off. And then end of the 90s, you get Dorian Gray, Lacrima Christi, Pierrot, and then you have Rouage, or Rouage. So those bands sort of took it to another step and another level also. But we'll get into that next week. So I'm gonna have a short show, but not too much this week. And the next week, as I say, we'll get back into the second stage of the Visual Kei. So the Visual Kei 特集 number 2. Okay. じゃあ今日は終わります。Thank you everyone. Oh, and thanks to everyone from last week. The Seikimatsu show, I think, is my most viewed show out of this year, 2020. The Seikimatsu. Seikimatsu. All right, so thank you all, and see you next week.